There we go.
Got it.
Okay.
It's recording
Yeah.
to the cloud. All right. Well, like you were just saying about guitars, man, all you need is one guitar. That's it.
That is very true. Very, very true. Yeah.
Henry Donahue, welcome to the Career Musician. We are honored to have you as a guest.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. It is a big day today.
It is Mental Health Action Day.
That's right.
If that's what you're referring to, yeah, I hope so.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm referring to. The way I always like to paint the picture is as creatives, as artists and musicians, we're all a little, a little loco sometimes because of our hearts being worn on our sleeves, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So, but to get serious and real with the matter, I think it's fantastic that you're willing to do this for us. And I want to, make sure that we take this seriously and that we get the story told and that all the resources are presented so people can actually take action.
Sure. Let's get into it. Let's do it.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Okay. So you're with the Save the Music Foundation via MTV and VH1. Can you tell us a little bit about?
Sure. Yeah. So Save the Music Foundation has been around about 25 years. Our mission is helping students, schools, and communities reach their full potential through the power of making music. And I don't think I probably have to convince anybody listening to this podcast that that's a good thing. But there is still an urgent need out there, particularly in public schools, in communities where, due to economic challenges and school administration challenges, they've cut music and the arts over the years. There's a real need to spur people to action and create urgency around the issue that music and making music should be a part of every student's school day. Right now, there are about 5 million students out there nationwide, about 15,000 public schools in places where, they've cut it, downsized it, or, never had it. And that's not okay. And so our mission is working with schools, working with communities so that when they bring music back to the classroom and the school administration agrees to budget for a teacher teaching music during the school day, then Save the Music Foundation is there alongside that school and that school district and that community with everything they need to get that program off the ground. So we've donated instruments to over 2,000 schools over the last 25 years. We've worked with hundreds of school districts. And now the program has evolved to the point where when a school comes online, and we have over 150 new schools coming online this year, they get instruments, but they also get books. They get the stands. They get increasingly more and more technology. So digital audio workstations, synthesizers, MIDI controllers. We do a lot around supporting the teacher. So making sure that the teacher is successful when this program gets off the ground. And we full-time advocate for music education. Okay. And bringing it back to mental health, particularly, over the last several years, and we've seen the toll that the pandemic and being out of school has taken on young people. Music is a powerful, powerful tool in making music for resilience, for recovering, for getting students back in school, and then working together through all the sort of thorny issues and challenges that have come up from a mental health perspective.
Man, that is incredible. There's so much to unpack right there in that opening statement. So I'm gonna pick little certain things here and there. We all know that when you are feeling, let's just say, like you said, due to the pandemic and whatever, or just in normal life, when you're feeling a little down, depressed, one of the best remedies is exercise, right? So you go out for a jog, you go for a walk, you shoot some hoops, whatever it is. And you're like, wow, I actually feel a little better, right? You get the endorphins going and that does it for you. So all of the school systems, or most of the school systems, from what I understand, still have athletics and sports, fully funded, correct?
100%. Yes.
So
I was just in Louisiana And there was a massive lobbying effort from the football coaches in communities in Louisiana to make sure that football came back as soon as possible. And don't get me wrong, I love football.
Yeah.
You have a big football program, you need a band. And so I get on a phone call with a principal and a superintendent, and they bring the football coach. I'm overjoyed. Yes, but yeah, continue with that thought.
Hey,
we're back. You kicked me out.
Yeah, we're back. We had a little glitch there. Okay, so I'll pick up. So, like you were saying, yes. So when you talk to football coaches, that's a great end. You need a band. You need music. So the parallel that I'm drawing here is, just like athletics is kind of really important to our mental well-being and overall health, music is the same. It's synonymous. So how did you, go about, or how do you go about convincing the school boards, hey guys, come on, we need this funding. Whatever we got to do, we got to salvage it. How does that all work?
Sure. The short answer on mental health is, I think that, and as a musician and as musicians, I think we understand intuitively the positive effect that playing music has on mental health. I try to play music every day. I'm guessing that you do, and most of your listeners here do. And you can just feel, how you feel when you're playing music, after you play music. It affects your brain in a very, very different way than being on a podcast does, or sending an email or whatever else we have to do during the day.
Sure.
And we also see that out in the world, right? So going beyond the impact that it has, and people know that. People make music in church. People are making music all the time. People have music at their wedding. People are, making music with their kids. And so music making is everywhere. And I think so I was trying to start with the firsthand experience. And I can talk to my own experience. I was sort of a hyperactive 10-year-old. I got in fights. I wasn't super connected to school. I remember the day that the band from the middle school came down to the multi-purpose room in my Maryland elementary school and did the demo of this is what band is all about. Yeah. And they had a duo. Both kids who I knew growing up and knew before, during, and after. One was on trumpet, one was on drums. And they did Rock Around the Clock. And it blew my 10-year-old mind. And from that day on, that's what I wanted to do. So I picked up the trumpet and I played that. I eventually picked up the guitar. I was in musical theater. I was in show choir. I was in every possible, musical thing that I could get my hands on. And it gave me a peer group at school. It gave me a reason to come to school. It gave me a connection to my education. It gave me a way during the school day to express myself in a way that other parts of school didn't. So I usually start with myself, my personal story, connect with, and I think in any kind of advocacy, that's really where you need to start. Mm-hmm. And then people can look around their community. When you think about vets, and I'll give a shout out to another amazing nonprofit, Guitars for Vets. I don't know if you know Patrick over there. We've been connected with them through Gibson. They work in VA hospitals all around the country. Music therapy for different kinds of students. What you see among older people and the impact that music had on them. My mother, before she passed, had dementia, and playing music for her, connecting, to those songs, she could remember every word for every Simon and Garfunkel song and every Beatles song. And so, music is everywhere. Music is an incredible part of people's lives, everyone's lives. Mm-hmm. So connecting with the idea of the joy of music, the power of music, and sort of the impact that music has on you emotionally, physically, I really always start with that. And then, beyond that, there is a ton of research and hundreds of case studies
That's right.
on the impact that music has on the brain, on the impact that music has on young people, on the impact that having active music making in your school has in your school. And so, on the off chance that the person you're talking to, the decision maker at the school level, isn't connected to in their life or personally or in their family to music, which is rare, mind you, because everybody is.
Right.
We have a ton of real data and research to back that up. I'll give you one of them that I sort of looked at right before we jumped on. So in 2019, University of Chicago reviewed over 200 studies around music and music making and arts and music in schools and music in the brain. And overwhelmingly, those studies showed that in school, which is where we're focused, music enables students to engage with their peers, with their teachers, with their experiences in a fundamentally different way than anything else that they're doing. They're doing in school. And you can look at studies that the NEA, the National Endowment for the Arts has done. Beyond that, music and the arts are particularly valuable for at-risk students.
Right.
So students who have a challenging situation at home or, in their lives outside of school. We have a ton of research and data that shows that when those students are making music, when there's active music making in the school as part of the school day, those schools do better, higher test scores, better attendance. Those students do better. They graduate at higher rates. They go on to become more productive citizens.
Right.
And that's the last thing I'll say about it. Like, my pitch isn't about creating amazing musicians, though if that's a byproduct, that's awesome. It's about creating successful people who have the skills to navigate the world. I was just in Mississippi, and I was fortunate to lead a panel discussion in Jackson, Mississippi, that had 4 incredible band directors from different parts of Mississippi. Yeah. These are powerful people, and hopefully people on the podcast can think about, a music teacher or a band director that had that impact in their life. And there's a guy down there. He's the band director, I believe, at Murrah High School in Jackson, Mississippi, Brian. And he said their motto is practice life. Don't practice for the performance. Don't practice for the halftime. You're practicing for life. So when you are listening to other people in your ensemble, when you're showing up on time, when you're prepared and have everything, your instrument, your everything ready to go on time. Yeah, I can see you reacting to that. And I can also reflect on how many bands I've been on where there was like that one person who was never on time. And there's, never in tune, whatever. So anyway, he says practice life.
Yeah.
And that really resonates with me. And that's what I pitch to these schools.
Well, wow. First of all, kudos to you. That's a fantastic pitch. And you have to come in from that point of, empathy, sympathy, understanding, right? Like you said, for advocacy, that's your entry point, which, by the way, aligns perfectly with our mission here at the Career Musician, because although we do exist to empower musicians with strategies for a sustainable career, that's what we want to do for those who want to pursue music as a career. But we hold you to a higher standard. I'm actually releasing a book Monday, and it's about your moral value system and what you adhere to. So that goes perfectly with practicing life and the fact that you want to make better people, not better musicians, because to be a musician, you need to be a good person first. You need to understand who you are, have a good grounding in it. You need to have good self-esteem, right? And all these different things. So they really do go hand in hand.
Yeah, it's funny, and I'm sure you can imagine this. What principals at schools really, really love? They love a wonderful holiday concert.
Mm.
You know what I mean? They love a great spring concert. Think back to your middle school, and how the principal who you hadn't seen, any sign of for weeks or months as a student, stood in front of the band, and introduced the band. And again, I love that. I love the principal loves a good winter concert. I love a football coach who loves a good drum line or a band at the game. But when it comes down to being advocates, again, that's not really what we're all about. Like, I love the kid who's really not such a great musician, but just loves it.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I just get such a kick out of, here's how I explain it to people. I go to other people's kids, like elementary school recorder concerts. Imagine that. You know what I mean? And so I just love it when a kid is like clearly not doing it right.
Yeah.
And, especially with the recorder ensembles, sometimes that's rough. That can be rough.
Remember those days? I remember mine. It was like this off yellow kind of beige with a green case.
Yeah. I mean, but I love when a kid is just, maybe he's not doing it right, but he's super into it.
Right.
You know what I mean? And yeah, I mean, I would love to, talk about it. And hear from you and also, because when I say music to people, we start talking about music, right. And podcast listeners can't see this, but we both have like a bunch of guitars and music stuff. And, in the backgrounds here on the Zoom, like, people light up.
Right.
When you talk about music education, sometimes people don't light up. You know what I mean? Because they're like connecting it to something that maybe in their experience was like, I don't know, their mom making them take piano lessons or something like that.
Well,
and so my question to you and, the listenership is, how do we like make that connection for people? When you have the joy and the transformative power of music and making music. I mean, everyone listens to music, but if you're a career musician, every day you're making music and you're deeply invested in that. And so how do we connect sort of the joy and transformative power to people's music education experience? That's my challenge out there when I'm talking to people who are in the industry or in the biz or, in music and doing it full time.
Yeah, that's a fantastic. Here's how I break it down. Like you said, professional musicians, we do music 24/7. Oftentimes, whatever profession you're in, so if you're in plumbing, electric, or some kind of physical labor job like that, or if you're in accounting or law, whatever it is, when you go home in your spare time, you don't want to do that job anymore. You're done. You just want to I don't want to read another law book or a contract. I don't want to touch my own kitchen sink because I just fixed 5 of them for other people today, right? Whatever it is. Well, for professional musicians, it's very much the same way. When we're not working, oftentimes we don't want to listen to music. We listen to talk radio, or we listen to audiobooks, or podcasts, or we listen to nothing. We listen to silence. Silence truly is golden.
Right.
Musician. However, on the other side of the spectrum, like you said, the average civilian loves music, and oh wow, you're a musician, man. Well, my cousin plays guitar, and my uncle and my aunt, she's a singer, and they just go on, and they're okay. So what I tell professional musicians when faced with this kind of a scenario, let us not forget that zeal and inspiration that we first found when we fell in love with music, when the music bug bit us, when we were 10, 11, 12, whatever age we were. I don't care if we were 20. When that inspiration hit, we got to remember what that feels like, because that's what we have to tap into. So now if I'm tapped into that as a professional, and I have all of these people, in the audience, or just like you said, in the wings, that want to talk to me about it, now I can come up to their level and be like, okay, yes, I love your appreciation for it and your excitement about it, right? We have to meet that zeal with zeal. And that's how the conversation can meet like this. And then that's also an opportunity for us to show that same person that the education of music is not boring. because you can teach, like you said, you can teach youngsters how to play the ukulele, 4 strings, and the joy on their faces is like, whoa. And I could teach a 60-year-old how to play that same ukulele chord or song, and the joy on their faces is the same. So,
Right.
you know, and now that's breaking it down to its most, you know, a fundamental part right there. But I'm not going to start teaching you about, you know, extended harmony and the theory behind figured bass, you know, but
Right.
the basic premise of it can be enjoyable. It's just like any other teacher. A teacher who teaches history in, you know, you know, fundamental school, they got to figure out a way to connect with their students. Otherwise, it's, you know, it's just boring.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. And I think that it comes back to, you asked sort of about the history of Save the Music. So Save the Music lives as its own independent nonprofit.
Okay.
Good big fact is we were started at VH1. We love VH1. You know, a lot of people remember Save the Music from the diva days, you know, Aretha Franklin and Celine Dion, Whitney Houston. And again, we're very, very grateful to that. But now we get about 5%. These days we get about 5% of our budget from MTV and VH1. So and really that's freed us up to, I think, develop a much more impactful program. So our impact on the ground and our engagement with communities is probably 2 or 3 times larger than it was back then. And getting back to your point, one of the big changes that we made that's driven that growth is that we don't come to a community with any kind of fixed agenda about what kind of music they should be making. So I'm not an advocate for, you know, officially for any kind of music. Like you know, and in point of fact, it would be, so I was just in New Orleans last week. We have an amazing New Orleans program. It would be pretty dumb for me to roll into New Orleans and start telling anybody anything about music. Right. So really what the driver behind any of our programs and any of our community projects is sitting with the people in that community and understanding what music are they excited about making.
That's right.
And, you know, so Save the Music was traditionally known for like middle school band and strings programs, which we love. Like I said, middle school band programs saved my life. And we still do a ton of those. But we found that when we go to the community and we spend time with the people there, the educators, people in the music ecosystem in a community, you know, the biggest factor in whether or not our investment in a program there and partnerships there are sustainable, or whether the teacher and the community and the school and the students and the families are excited about the music they're making.
Right.
And that can lead us into all sorts of amazing directions. So these days, again, we still do a ton of band grants and string grants. We've seen a huge growth in elementary music. So in students, you know, playing recorders and ukuleles and world percussion and, you know, those Orff xylophones that have the scale and students don't have to learn how to read music, right? They can play, you know, the Orff, you have one. Do you have one there?
I just used one on an indie documentary that I scored. Hold on, I got to get Oh, that's awesome. Okay, I see. And see, that's the whole thing. That's the whole joy of it, is that it's fun when you
exactly. And you know what? With
5 or 50, right?
Yeah, as you know, you take that thing out of the case, you can start. Like that's like a metallophone, or is it a xylophone?
I guess. What's the difference? I never knew.
There's like different sizes and different keys, and you know.
Well,
so
yeah, this is metal. This is, you know, whoops.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Little kids can start playing those things right away. Your metallophone, like, crashed.
Metallophone. And then what do you call this? Is it the harmonium?
Oh yeah. Look at that. Yeah. That's awesome. That's like, I just went to see Gang of Four, and they have a couple songs where they have a harmonium on it.
There you go. And the crazy part is, so this is a great tie-in that these are instruments you can use to educate people on the most fundamental musical level, right?
Exactly.
I
Yeah,
just used those two instruments and the ukulele for a film score that I'm doing. So
exactly.
it runs the whole gamut.
And then, yeah. And so I think that really the takeaway is that when you listen to the community and you engage with the community and the educators and the music ecosystem in a place,
Right.
that's led us into a lot of new directions in terms of the grants and investments we make in schools. So we've seen huge growth in those elementary programs. In middle schools, in the last just 2 years, we've seen a big uptick in mariachi.
Ah.
So student programs in places like LA, where you have, large Mexican American populations, and students are excited about connecting with their culture, in an authentic way. And so mariachi has seen a big uptick. And then at the high school level, we've seen a ton of growth in beat making, producing, DJing, songwriting, all of those things.
Well, something that really caught my attention when you were talking earlier about the instruments that you guys, make available to all of the school systems, you mentioned DAWs, digital audio workstation.
Yeah, sure.
That's fantastic because like you said, a lot of the kids, especially in that teenage zone from late middle school all the way through high school, that's what they're into. They want to learn how to produce and make beats, right?
100%. And we see that when you introduce music tech to the high school curriculum, it pulls in those music kids.
Yep.
So you have kids who are pretty serious music kids, and that's the music they've been making at home and listening to in their earbuds, that they take out when they come and, play the French horn at school or whatever. And then it also pulls in the kids who are like, hey, wait a minute, like, this sounds cool.
Sounds cool.
Yeah. So we have a school, we have a school in Newark, New Jersey, big high school, right in the middle of Newark. They have about 1,600 kids there. 1,100 last year signed up for music tech.
Come on. I mean, that's huge. And, I was going to say, I went to a performing arts high school in the 90s, and I signed up with those classes as well. I was at the cusp, the beginning of MIDI, right? Musical instrument, digital interface. And those classes, my electronic music classes, they were so dope. I love those classes.
Yeah. And I'll tell you a little more about it. So it's called the Dilla Music Tech Program. Dilla is our patron saint. And so the background is we had an inkling probably about 5 years ago that this was a direction we were going because we saw so much demand from the schools. Yeah. And it used to be called the Music Technology Program. We announced that with Steve Aoki and DJ Khaled with a lot of fanfare. And then some people on our board and other people were like, hey, you guys, you got to figure out a better name for this. So they brought in Pharrell and his agency team at I Am Other. Yeah. And I said, okay, what should we name this? And they're like, listen, you need a patron saint. This gets back to how you do advocacy. And in this case, they're better at it than I am. They said, you need a patron saint for this, like Jimmy V on ESPN for like the V Foundation. You can picture Jimmy V running around the court trying to find somebody to hug, when he won the game, the Final Four. He's like, you guys need a patron saint. So when you say the name of this program, then people, musicians, producers, people in the business immediately know what it's all about. And there's only one person that could be. And that person is Jay Dilla.
Jay Dilla, come on, man.
And then everyone sort of started nodding their heads. And then we DM'd Ma Dukes, his mom, on Instagram and said, hey, can we fly you to New York to talk about this? We want to we would love to sort of invest in the legacy of your son and his genius, because Dilla is really like the Coltrane of, beats. It's just like a totally mind expanding, approach to it. And, so she came to New York, and by the end of that first meeting, everybody in the room was crying.
I was just saying, wow, that's powerful, man.
And so as of the end of this year, we'll have 50 of these in high schools nationwide.
Of the tech programs?
Yeah, just a music tech program at high schools.
Incredible.
And bringing it back, because it's Mental Health Action Day, That's the program that we're leaning into in LA with XRE and the activation that we did for Mental Health Action Day. So
I'm so glad you brought that up because first of all, we got to give a big shout out to XRE. She's the reason why you and I are talking.
oh, amazing. Yeah.
She introduced me to Jay Osterman. Jay Osterman introduced us to you. So,
Yeah.
and unfortunately, I could not make it out to Wisdomania.
And also shout out to Rob Kleiner, who's the producer, who also the day. Yeah, it was. We had our LA team was there. I was in New Orleans,
Okay,
but
right.
yeah, I mean, it's very, very grateful both to MTV and to XRE, and we still work a ton. And Jay works like on the other side of the floor that I work on in New York, so we know those guys well. But yeah, it's when you are tapping into songwriting and lyric writing and music making and all those things, particularly, and we see a lot of powerful feelings come from people in these high school classes. That's a great opportunity. And going back to what I talked about the research and sort of how the music making provides an entirely different environment in school for teachers to engage with their students around social emotional learning and mental health. This was a great showcase for that. So we love it. We love songwriters. We love beat makers. We love producers. It's been amazing.
That's incredible. Just the fact we can all relate to this. Think back through your life and think about all the songs that touched you and made you feel a certain emotion at points of your life and how much you relied on that music to get you through those times, or you tapped into those songs to listen to make you feel that certain way again, right? So if they're uplifting, you're like, oh man, I got to have my little uplifting playlist. If you're down in the dumps, going through a breakup or whatever, you have to have a playlist for that. You know what I mean? So
yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Relatability is just so.
And that's, it's funny. We have a board member from Live Nation, and that's particularly, I was talking to her about this because, Live Nation is now like packaged up a festival or tour. No matter how old you are, they have a festival for you that has assembled every artist from when you were 14 to 17, like in a single show.
It's so funny you say that. We're going to Bottle Rock next week in Napa, and it's Live Nation. They put that together. Yeah.
Yeah. But have you seen this? So my son, I have a 22-year-old who's very into emo.
Oh yeah.
And they have you seen this When We Were Young festival?
Yes. Yeah.
If you Google When We Were Young, like what comes up is the one of the top queries is When We Were Young real? Because they have assembled every possible emo band. From My Chemical Romance,
yep.
To Dashboard Confessional, and it's and that's a great example, which is, emo and being that age. Yeah. And, it's, I took my son because I love punk rock and I love metal. And I took him to a lot of Warped Tours.
There you go.
You know what I mean? And it's, yeah, to your point, it's super powerful. And I think everybody has music that they can relate to in that vein. For me, really, so again, I grew up in Maryland, in the DC suburbs in the 80s, which at that time was the center of the punk rock world.
Yeah.
I saw Fugazi's very first show. I saw Bad Brains.
Wow.
Now I'm like one of those crotchety old guys. I see people wearing those T-shirts all around.
Well, it's funny.
I
was right up 95. I'm from Long Island, New York. So
yeah,
and I grew up in the 80s. So I know exactly what you're talking about, man.
And that to me was such a powerful combination of the power of the music, the power of the positive message,
right,
that the music related, and I'm not going to go down the rabbit hole of, straight edge or whatever, but all in all, Bad Brains, Minor Threat, the Discord bands showed how you could make very, very powerful, very hard rocking music, couple it with a positive message. So the message of Bad Brains is PMA, positive mental attitude. um, and operate in the music business with integrity.
Ah, but
You know what I mean?
wow, you just said, well, hold the phone.
Yeah, please.
You just uttered a mouthful. Man, that is incredible. You gotta say that again. You gotta reiterate that because that's powerful.
Right. So, and I'll add on to it. So, if you think about DC Hardcore and Discord and Bad Brains and all those bands,
Mhm.
those are amazing examples of bands that rocked
Mm.
and rocked hard and didn't take any shit from anybody
Yep.
and did it with a positive message. So again, the message of Bad Brains is PMA, positive mental attitude.
I mean, that's right there. Come on.
Um, extended that message to the scene. So like, I mean, I know that people, it's sort of become a bit of a cliche, Ian MacKaye lecturing people from the stage at Fugazi shows, but all these ideas that came out of that around girls to the front, and maybe after the show, we ought to go down to the South African embassy, you know what I mean? And protest against apartheid, and that everything was all ages and we were going to do it ourselves, and you think about the lasting legacy of that, to have been involved in that for me and to be at those shows and to know those people a little bit.
Man.
It's incredibly inspiring and inspires me to this day. I was on C-SPAN talking about music in schools.
Nice.
And at the end, they're like, well, do you want to give a thank you or say anything else? And I was like, well, I grew up in and around DC and I'm here today in DC. So I want to thank, Ian MacKaye and Discord Records. And I'm sure nobody on watching C-SPAN knew any idea what I was talking about. And yeah, that's a powerful combination for me that, informs my work to this day. Like, what kind of artists do we want to work with? What kind of, student experiences do we want to create? So when an artist comes to a school, what are we trying to do there? Are we trying to have a marketing opportunity for that artist and create content for them and their socials while they're on tour? Yes. But we're not going to do something that's not a worthwhile experience for the student. So one of our culture code values that say the music is students first.
Oh man.
So
first, I love that, because how are you going to edify the student body? How are you going to bring them, power, right? Empower them.
Yeah. And so the students are like, this is sort of a moral philosophy concept, but they're ends unto themselves, right? So how do we create, and they're not means to an end. They're not people that we're casting in an Instagram video for an artist.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So anyway, all which is to say, yeah, people, yes, to your point, very, very strongly relate to music in an emotional way.
Yes.
Particularly the music that they experienced and made when they were in their teenage years. Yeah. I was super fortunate, looking back, to be part of a scene, in a punk rock scene, that embodied a lot of those positive values, that we're trying to relate. And then I do want to add, like, I'm amazed to be on a podcast called The Career Musician, because I wanted to be a career musician. So when I played in bands in high school and college and thereafter, and toured and put out records, and was lucky enough to play on bills with some of those same artists that I admired, and was able to lucky enough to have Ian MacKaye and Discord distribute our first vinyl single, and play in all the venues in DC, the 930 Club, the Black Cat, where I'd seen those bands, come up to New York and play at CBGB's. When I was able to have those experiences, that's I'm still just super, super grateful for all of that, and having been a part of that, even if I eventually decided I had to stop sleeping on people's couches and, go to grad school. But
That's so funny. Here's the quick elevator pitch on that, and it's not really a pitch. It's the reality of here's A and here's B. So to be a career musician, it all starts with a decision. Do you want to pursue the artistry? Do you want to be, a solo artist or an original band? Or do you want to go back up other artists and bands? So that decision I made early to be the backing guy. I was in the backing band, and
right.
through that, you can monetize your talents, okay? But, my dad always used to say art and commerce don't mix. And to a point, he's absolutely right. It's impossible to find that fulcrum point where they do converge, right? That convergence. However, if you can subsidize your art by attaching your talent to others who have already scaled their business, now you can start to
right.
So that
I have so much love and respect for anybody who's making a living making music. I would do any of those things tomorrow. I'd drop it all tomorrow. Someone would be like, "Hey man, you gotta back up this come play guitar with us on this 45 city tour."
Yeah.
I'd be like, great. What time do we leave? Yeah.
That's it. I love it. All right. I have a few more questions for you.
Yeah, please. Yeah.
Today, May 19th being Mental Health Action Day, what can people do to take action? Now, I know a little bit about the action items, but I'd like to hear it from you. And I want people to really do this stuff really for themselves, right?
Yeah, and I thought about this specifically around musicians, right? Because that's where we live and breathe and work. And the first thing I always tell people is there are so many amazing nonprofits doing great work in this space. I mentioned one of them earlier, Guitars for Vets.
Yes,
Guitars for Vets, incredible organization focused on mental health. They have chapters in almost any city where somebody's going to be listening to this podcast. They always need guitar teachers, songwriting instructors. What they do is run a program at the VA where vets who, many of whom have chronic mental health conditions, can sign up for songwriting and guitar playing classes. They have a really great sort of therapeutic angle to it, particularly for people who are working through, post-traumatic stress and those kinds of things. And it's a wonderful program. It's run by a guy named Patrick out of Wisconsin. And they are all over the country. They're always looking for volunteers. They're always looking for people who can play guitar, teach guitar, not teach people to be virtuoso guitar players. And then at the end of each program, if you complete the program, you get a guitar. Get a pretty nice guitar, usually from Gibson.
That's incredible.
If you're one of the vets. And so it's a great program. I'll also give a shout out. We work with, and I'm a great admirer of a number of programs that work with, on a similar program, teaching music, teaching songwriting to people who are in or have been diverted from the criminal justice system. Similar. So there's a higher bar here. There's actually a bit more training that you need to do to actually get into a correctional facility and teach music. So one that we work with in LA is called Jail Guitar Doors.
Okay.
Quickly tell you the quick story. So if people are punk rockers, they'll recognize that Jail Guitar Doors is a song by The Clash. It's about a guy named Wayne Kramer, who is one of the founding members of the MC5. If you don't know the MC5, they were on the ballot for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame this year. It's crazy that they weren't elected. MC5 were the rockingest.
Yep.
They did Kick Out the Jams, mother effers. And so Wayne, after he left the MC5, went to prison on a drug-related charge, and then the Clash wrote a song with him. And fast forward to now, Billy Bragg and Wayne Kramer started up this thing called Jail Guitar Doors, which works with incarcerated people, mostly in the California system, and then young people who've been diverted from the justice system. And in the prisons, it's mostly around songwriting and music making and guitar playing. With the young people, it's around digital audio workstations and engineering and producing. They have a beautiful new facility right down on Fairfax in LA. And so check it out, Jail Guitar Doors. There's also another California-based thing called Give a Beat that we've worked with that's more around the beat making and DJing and producing. So similarly, if you understand sort of how mental health challenges can potentially lead to a justice involved situation, these guys do amazing work. And then, I'll also give a shout out, and this isn't new news to anybody, musicians on call and, all the stuff that they do is great. So the takeaway is there's always somebody local to you who has a local or national nonprofit who's doing great work and can connect you to getting involved in something with a group of people that you're passionate about working with, be it young people or veterans or people who've been ensnared in our criminal justice system for various reasons.
Like anything else, it starts at the community level. Get involved with your community.
100%. People, I think a lot of times people, particularly artists, go down this road of like, well, I'm going to start my own nonprofit.
Yeah.
You laugh. It's a very common situation, right? There's a lot. I'll refrain from opining on it, but what I will say is there's a lot of nonprofits in the U.S. There's something like one nonprofit for every 10 people in the United States. And a lot of them, I guarantee that there's one already doing great work around music and a community that you care about, local to you. And people want to get in touch with us, via the SaveTheMusic.org website. Just lob in a question, say you heard me on this podcast. We respond to every email, right. And we can, if you're having trouble finding, a right fit or somebody. I could just think of it. If you're in Nashville, there's an incredible group called Southern Word that works with young people around lyric writing and spoken word stuff and connecting that to their music. That's amazing. But the big picture is, yes, get involved locally, get involved with a nonprofit that's already doing amazing work around music and mental health and a community that you care about, because they're definitely out there.
Love that. How about now let's talk about the stigma and the shame and that whole aspect of mental health and just saying, oh, wow, I may have some mental health issues. I'm going to be honest and transparent. I have a therapist whom I love. She's amazing. I talk to her as much as I need to, and it's great, but that whole stigma thing. And if people really do need help, what's your advice there?
And I'm not really qualified to opine on that. If you're having a mental health challenge, I do, but I can say as a parent, and as somebody who works with educators, I think you've hit the nail right on the head. The most important thing is to talk to somebody, right, about it.
There you go.
And I always say to people, they're like, is music, is music a powerful, tool for addressing people's mental health issues? The answer is yes, but it's not the only one, right? So exactly to your point, like talking to a person who's a mental health professional, you know what I mean? And then figuring out how to integrate the power of music and your love of music making and all those things can be a very powerful part of that plan, in my experience. Right. But, I don't want to give anybody the impression that it's a substitute for, finding a great therapist.
Life happens, right? And we all go through life circumstances, and it's a good thing to identify with others, and that's what I think sharing does. When you open up about something, and it can be in confidence with one other person whom you trust or several others, but when you realize that you're not the only one going through it, and that, oh wow, other humans have experienced this, there's a camaraderie that happens through that process, right?
That's right. And I think that's a big breakthrough and a big revelation for people. I will say though, and just getting back to the music classroom part of it, we have seen a lot of these mental health techniques, come the other way. And I think, and I know that XRE did this as part of her session. I also want to give a shout out to, some other people doing great work in this space who are music educators and are bringing some of those mental health strategies, into the music classroom. So it's not just that music is the tool, it's that the music classroom is a great opportunity to have those conversations with young people around emotions. And so we work with a professor named Ping Ho at UCLA Arts and Healing, who does a lot of work with us. I was just with an amazing educator named Cameron Jenkins, also at that Mississippi thing. Cameron is a great advocate for life skills and leadership skills, similar to that practice life idea and how you bring that into the classroom. And I was just with a person named Key Slaughter. Okay. They are an instructor at Loyola in New Orleans. And before we even talked about music at this session, we spent a half hour doing some breathing exercises, some box breathing, some guided meditation, along with an original piece that Key had written, and working with Key and a group of music teachers and musicians in New Orleans, some of whom I'm guessing for which this might have been a new thing. I mean, it was a really powerful thing. So not only are people leveraging the power of music as a tool for mental health, the music classroom, people are doing a lot of great work around bringing things like mindfulness and, a lot of those mental health techniques and strategies into the classroom. So if people don't know Keith Slaughter, look them up. Loyola, New Orleans, really great artist and music therapist, and just led a super powerful session that I was in. And then again, people's minds were just opened and their imagination was sort of sparked, to talk about what can we do next to build up music education in New Orleans in a way that matches the incredible legacy and, cultural richness of music in New Orleans. So anyway, I want to say that, yeah, not only is music a tool for improving your mental health, you can also use the music environment as an opportunity to bring in some of these other techniques. And I'm grateful to XRE and the Mental Health Action Day for bringing that into one of our classrooms in LA.
Fantastic. I think
for the session.
Yeah, I think more interactive workshops like that are definitely a necessity across the globe, in and out of the classroom,
Sure.
From elementary school all the way up through TED Talks. I mean, we need.
I mean, have you done them as part of, like, in your professional life, as part of in your band life, or in your your recording life? Is that Absolutely. A thing that you see that happening?
Yeah, absolutely. I've done quite a few, seminars, lectures, and workshops and whatnot, and I want to do a lot more to expand the awareness.
Yeah, it's funny. So I used to, before I had this job, and I've been doing this for about 6-7 years, I worked at a digital agency and a consultancy called Purpose, which is just worked on social good projects. And we tried to incorporate it was an interesting learning. We tried to incorporate mindfulness into the workday in the office. Mm. And you know what? It wasn't successful in my view. Mm. Because if you're going to be mindful and meditate and sort of, free yourselves, don't do that in a conference room at your office.
You can't sit down when you're doing that.
No. So anyway, last pitch for the music room. I think it's super hard to do if you're at work or you're at school, yeah. Right? For your career musicians who are at their plumbing job, the guy at the plumbing company is like, we're going to spend 30 minutes meditating before we go out and fix sinks. People are going to be like, what the F are you talking about? No way.
My sink fixed now.
Yeah, exactly. No. So, but if you're in a music environment, you're in a creative environment, there's a different vibe, then. So it was a really interesting contrast. So at this conference, this convening that we did in New Orleans, all these music people, it was a super powerful tool. And my old job, where we tried to do it every Tuesday in the conference room, colossal failure. So so use that music environment as an opportunity to have, getting back to your question about stigma and these things, to have that conversation when people are in sort of an open, creative vibe. I'm a big believer in that.
All right. So listen, we want to empower the listeners how they can get involved and if they're in need. So if you're in a community and you are a creative musical being, but you don't have the tools, you don't have instruments, you don't have access to a studio, you don't have the technological equipment, what can they do? How can they contact you guys to find help?
To find help if they need gear?
Yeah, if they want to get into that, they're like, man, I know I'm a great musician, but I just, I don't have the money or whatever.
That's an interesting question. So to be clear, we only work in the school environment. So
stay in school.
Yeah, stay in school. If your school doesn't have it and they want it, then reach out to us. And so we have a pretty high bar, and we require the school and the school district to hire a teacher.
Okay.
Have that teacher in the classroom during the school day, a certain number of hours a week, have a dedicated room for music, and commit to that for at least 10 years to get the Save the Music grant. Because the Save the Music grant is on average, about $50,000 worth of gear and stuff, and then all the other support that our program team brings to the table. So if your school doesn't have it and you think they might be eligible, again, go to savethemusic.org. We've got a ton of information there about what the requirements are, how to get in contact with us, what we require from the school district. But 100%, we need champions in the community and we particularly need working people in the music ecosystem to be champions for young people and young creators in music in the community. Go ahead. Yeah.
Is my research correct? And you guys have helped over 2,000 schools already?
Yeah. And it's growing very rapidly. So we're going to invest in another 150, 160 schools just this coming school year.
Wow. Okay.
And one of the reasons the program is so successful and sustainable is we require a lot from the school district. School district needs to step up. We don't support art on a cart. As we say, you need to have a music room. It needs to be scheduled during the band day, the school day. You need to it needs to be a real class that kids can sign up for. And if you don't stick with it for at least 10 years, we can come and take all the stuff back, which rarely happens, mind you. It's a very sustainable, so while I've been here, we probably made 600 or 700 school investments all around the country, and roughly 99% of them are still going strong.
That's since you've been there, that's like 100 per year. That's incredible.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
that keeps you busy.
and we're growing. Yeah.
So I wanted.
But I want to answer your question though. So if somebody, so I will say this there, and we've been digging into this quite a bit. There are a number of, if you're a young person, so what they call sort of this opportunity youth category, like you're between 18 and 24. So if you're in school, then Save the Music, I think that's where we operate. If you're just out of school, you're trying to figure out how to make your way in the world. There are a number of programs. Music Forward, which is out of Live Nation, is a great place to start. They do a lot of just basic how-tos, both around performance, production, the business, those sort of things. There's an organization called Notes for Notes that works out of Boys and Girls Clubs, that does a lot of after-school programs in cities around digital audio workstations, performing. I actually just saw they have this somehow at Best Buy. They have like D8 DAWs and synthesizers and computers at your Best Buy.
It's cool.
So, and then, yes, there are a lot of local programs. So we work in New Orleans with a group called Upbeat Academy
Mm.
that does a lot of this work. Um, uh, yeah, if you want to like go to a place in a program where they're teaching people job skills around music. We work Noelle Skaggs at Fits in the Tantrum, who's from the front woman at Fits in the Tantrums, and who is a powerhouse activist, has a program called Diversify the Stage, which provides, so if you're at least 18 years old and you have some live audio chops,
Yeah.
they want you. Like they'll subsidize an internship in a program for you to get on board at a festival or on a tour.
Amazing.
So that stuff is definitely out there. It's less established and sort of more growing.
That's why it's good that you're
Yeah.
giving us the lowdown. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. So, but, from the education side, there's a lot going on. Community colleges, the record labels trying to get diverse people in for internships to learn on the business side of things, diversify the stage, local programs, notes for notes. So similar to what I said about the mental health thing, there's almost always a nonprofit doing work in this space.
Okay.
In the music ecosystem in your town.
Mm.
And so finding out who they are, connecting with them, is a good start. And then I'm sure you give people this advice about how to get into the business all the time. Like show up, make yourself useful, do good work.
I mean, you said it early on, almost an
Yeah.
hour ago. You were like, "Hey, the musicians that show up on time, yes, punctuality. I cannot preach it enough.
Punctuality, like, yeah.
Responsibility, business acumen, organizational skills, knowing how to budget, knowing how to present yourself. I mean, come
Is your
on.
pickup working?
Yeah, right.
Is the power source for your pedal board on?
Did you turn on how well you maintain your gear and how well organized you are. I mean, come on.
Yeah. Although I was talking, I'm terrible at changing my strings. I was telling a guy from one of the guitar companies last week. I think it was the guy from Gibson. I was like, for years, I was like, I love that dead string sound. I never change my strings. It's because I like how it sounds.
More than half of the guitars in this room have old strings on them.
Yeah, the reality was I was just too lazy to change the strings.
Oh yeah, man, changing strings is a job. That is no joke.
Oh, I heard that woman who plays bass in Khruangbin has never changed the strings, her strings, but then it sounds incredible.
And that's an old, dead 70s funk sound.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess, but for me, no, I just told people that because I never got around to changing them.
That's so awesome. So listen, Henry, thank you so much, man. You've been so awesome. I wanted to ask you this question earlier on. I kind of skimmed over it, but you kind of answered it in a roundabout way. You were always involved in music, like you said. The bug bit you early on. And then you got into more of the executive position. Now you're executive director at Save the Music, and you had some other, stop-offs along your path. And you've also divulged to us that you would love to go out there and be a. So
I'm really good at guitar noise. That was always my specialty. So if you want like a really just like noisy feedback like type thing, I'm your man.
Hey man, I love it. Punk rock for life. How does all of this musical experience that you've had, and you're, like you said, coming up in DC, how is it all bridged between your executive position here? In other words, you know what I'm saying? How did it all?
Yeah, it's a great question. So
catalyst.
Right. So I came up high school. It was very into punk rock in that DC scene, and not just punk rock, like. Shout out on this podcast to Tommy Keene, who passed away a couple of years ago. One of my all-time guitar playing and songwriting heroes. Went to the high school like 3 miles from me. TK, rest in power. It's a deep reference for the DC heads out there. But, and then when I got to college, so in high school, I did every musical thing I could possibly do. I had my own band. I was in musical theater. I was in show choir. I played in the concert band. I played in the jazz band. And, I also look back on the there were a few key teachers along the way who really inspired me. So I remember I'm not a great singer. So many thanks to Ms. Baldwin who put me in show choir because I was so enthusiastic about it. And then, said, hey, why don't you do this solo? Why don't you come back next year and perform this piece? My first high school band teacher was a guy named Mr. Swope. He was hungover 50% of the time. But he loved Doc Severinsen. He was a trumpet player. He loved Doc Severinsen. But Swope, not a great music teacher, but someone who always was like, "Hey, you're good at this. Like, you could do this. Yeah. Like, why don't you sign up for jazz band?" And then when I got to college, had my own band, did radio at college. Was on a thing called WHRB 95.3, the Record Hospital, which spawned a lot of great bands. Lemonheads came out of that scene. Galaxy 500. And then when I got out of college, I really tried to do it, man. I played a bunch of DIY indie bands, started my own little label. I was very, very committed to that DC ideal of we're going to play all ages shows. We're going to write our own stuff. We're going to get in the van. We're going to put out our own records.
That takes major tenacity, man. You got to be proactive.
Well, yeah, you know what? I was maybe better at that part of it than I was at guitar playing and songwriting.
But see, that goes back to the whole concept of team. It takes the team to create anything with substance, right? Everybody in the team has their little area of expertise.
And we had an incredible rhythm section. Like I've always been fortunate to play with great drummers. And so I have enormous appreciation for just amazing drummers. So, at the end of the 90s, and I had a day job where I was doing fundraising for Democratic political campaigns. In both walks of life, I was sleeping on people's couches.
Wow. Wow.
So I went to grad school. Yeah. And when I got out of grad school, I mostly worked in digital media.
Okay.
So, and so I did that and reasonably successfully, like at some .com startups, some big media companies, some small media companies. Eventually was working at this place called Purpose, where we just did digital media for social good things. So we worked for Everytown for gun safety. We worked for the ACLU. We worked for brands like Nike and Unilever and Levi's that were trying to incorporate social good into what they did. But I was always playing music, the whole time, like mom and dad bands, somebody needed to come over to somebody to play Christmas songs at their restaurant or whatever. I was like, yeah, why not? Yeah. And then, so in 2016, I was connected through a friend of a friend to a guy named Chris McCarthy, who had just taken over VH1. Chris now runs like everything at Paramount related to like any unscripted show and animated series that you see. And he said, I'm very committed to having social impact and social good be a part of what MTV and VH1 is about. Would you be interested in coming to help sort of re-energize Save the Music? And a light went, again, just like that kid in that fourth grade class when the Rock Around the Clock came to the multi-purpose room, like a light went on for me.
Yeah.
Like, hey, wait a minute. Like, and I had always avoided doing music as a business. Like I'd never wanted to go work for a record label. I was always very committed to that sort of DIY, approach to things.
Sure.
Sort of the punk rock, get in the van. Integrity. But I saw an opportunity to do the thing that I love, bring that experience that I had, which is music, bring that experience that I had as a fourth grader to tens of thousands of other fourth graders, all around the nation. And, bring to bear actually all this business stuff and social good stuff that I'd been doing for the previous 15 years. So really take a strategy where a lot of what we do is online, a lot of the social impact theory and strategy that we had used at Purpose, and bring that to Save the Music, around working with communities, listening to communities. One of our rules, if we engage with the community, is from the community perspective, it's don't do anything about us without us. Right. And so it's going back to my point is I don't show up in any community, Detroit, Memphis, New Orleans, Dayton, Ohio, no matter where it is, with a fixed idea of what kind of music people should be making. So, I could take all that social impact experience and all that theory and all that strategy and, knowing how to like navigate around the bureaucracy of a big media company like MTV, because I'd worked at media companies, and bring that to bear on something that I really, really loved. And it's been incredibly satisfying. And I do want to say it's not just me. We have an amazing team. There was an amazing team, a core team already at Save the Music when I got there, of really committed people who were doing great work in communities and with music educators. And so what we've been able to do is, with some love and attention and investment, build it out to the point where the impact now of Save the Music is far greater than it ever was in the VH1 Diva days.
Incredible. And that's what you said earlier. I remember Save the Music from the VH1 Diva days. That was, that was 90s, right? Some mid 90s.
Late 90s. So yeah, this is the 25th. This is actually our 25th anniversary year. So 1997. And again, just incredible love and respect to the people who came up with the idea.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And filled a real need and sort of raised around awareness and urgency around music in schools.
That's right.
And that they sort of built the platform that we were then able to build on top of, to create what we're doing now.
Incredible, man. Well, Henry Donahue, once again, thank you so much for joining us here on the Career.
Thanks for having me. I love, as you can see, I love talking about it, and I would love, if this spurs, anybody from your audience to get involved. We need the community, we need career musicians, we need the music ecosystem to be the champions for this.
Excellent. So besides using the mental health action tags and whatnot, what else can we tag? Save the Music? What any particular hashtags?
Yeah. Hashtag music saves.
Music saves. Got it. Hashtag.
So we don't. So this, I say this all the time. It's ironic that it's called Save the Music, because music doesn't need saving, as you know, right? Music is alive and well.
That's right.
Music doesn't need our help in that regard, but music saves, right? So the power of music. And bringing it back to that mental health point is, and there's a lot going on in the world. There's a lot of urgent issues out there competing for people's attention. So we need career musicians to be the champions and the advocates for young people coming up and having music in the school.
Yes, because music can save. It can make a difference. It really can.
Music saves.
There you go.
Hashtag music saves.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, I love it. So thank you for. I'm so grateful to be able to talk to you and talk to your listeners. And let's keep getting after it.
Absolutely. I'm going to stay in touch if that's cool. I'm going to shoot you.
Please.
Okay, great. I'm dropping my book Monday, and I would love to send you a copy.
Yeah, awesome.